name's Chris Hegg. I wanted to bring you here to this petroglyph, this specific rock. I've been researching since I was 13 when I first had it shown to me. I was always amazed because, like many petroglyphs, hundreds of petroglyphs I've seen, this site too is an enigma. It is in a pretty good location per se as far as petroglyphs go, because there's a creek over here in the existing lake, Walker Lake, is right down below here. But it wasn't always that way. Out of the decades that I've spent researching, I came to dead ends. Couldn't figure out why symbology occurred and reoccurred at different sites. I went in the Air Force and I did Morse code and I studied cryptology, and cryptology offered a basis, a very structured basis on how to possibly decipher even some symbols like this. So when I came back home, I started in earnest for the next 25 years tracking every single one of these symbols on every petroglyph site in every state that I can go visit. And it did me no good. I've got logs, library full of logs and photos, tens of thousands of photos of every petroglyph that I visited, and even some I didn't, and tried to compile information. Nothing broke the code. It wasn't until 15 years ago that I finally found a very rare petroglyph. It was very small, and it was by a hunting spring. They had some hunting rings there, and the entire map, literally, when you went to this petroglyph site, which was several hundred feet away from the scene in the canyon, laid out the entire hunting site. And that was my first glimpse into single images. These extra images make it too confusing because you need to know some symbols before you go breaking into bigger panels. So I took that knowledge, and from there I finally was able to use all of that information, not only being out in the hills and witnessing what happens in nature around these sites, but I have a background in geology and helping geologists and stuff in the 80s. There was a mining boom here, and I love mining, grew up around old miners, learned how to mine myself. And so I applied this hard sciences to this and found something that I had never thought of before, because archaeology taught us different. I had it so structured in my head that these are only a few thousand years old, that the environment around me was specific to what's going on with these petroglyphs. And the more I researched around petroglyphs, the less I found about why they were there, around the middle of nowhere, until I applied the geology in some of the symbol meanings. I found, with very hard evidence, that all of these sites, no matter where I go, inside the western United States, North America, I found that all the petroglyphs are near the ends of lakes, ancient lakes, not today's lakes. Lakes 13 to 16,000 years old. And then it dawned on me that these petroglyphs meant something, because they meant that people moved, for some reason, or had an interest in describing events that happened at the ends of these giant lakes. Of course, some of these interlinking lakes linked together for states, whole states wide. But going north to south with these mountain ranges, which would have been islands 16,000 years ago, we're talking the time when saber-toothed mammoths, 10-foot sloths, 10-foot horned deer ran around this area. These would have been islands and lakes around them. Well, what's the easiest way today that we move goods? By physics, you move it by water. It's the cheapest way. Use the least technology. And that's what these ancients were doing. These ancients came here before modern man's written record that exist today. And they moved supplies and moved between lakes by way of ships 13 to 16,000 years ago at the earliest. It was much later before that they could have been here. They could have been here since 20,000 years ago. But I only have enough research on the Great Lakes that I can say that the end of the Great Lakes, when everything dried up and you could no longer trade goods like that, was 13 to 16,000 years ago. In fact, Desert Research Institute found a petroglyph at Pyramid Lake that luckily they put on a tufa and it was buried. It was actually covered with water from somewhere between 11,500 years to 14,800 years ago before it was exposed. In fact, I think it was 13 to 14,000 years ago, and it was exposed 11,000 years ago. And originally they said that was a 9,000-year-old petroglyph. That was a very old petroglyph. It wasn't old. They're all the same age. And if you look at the lake levels, every single petroglyph that I can sit on my laptop today at home and find, whether it be in whatever state, I usually have a 9 out of 10 success rate of finding petroglyph sites just by looking at Google Maps and stuff, using geology. I find that archaeology is wrong by a long shot. It's because of Darwin's theory. You know, you have to be starting from the apes, and that's where we progressed from. And of course, knowledge has to be that way too. We were stupid, and now we're smart. We're now the smartest people that's ever survived on the planet. And I say that's wrong because these guys traded the world globally 16,000 years ago. And they did it by ship, and they tracked the solar events. There's calendars up here on top. They tracked the weather patterns. They knew everything about the ice, where the flows were, how to get across the world. And they traded supplies, which means it was a civilization that interacted with other civilizations around the entire globe before modern man even thought the pyramids were built. The interesting thing is these symbols match the megaliths found all over the world. They match the newer written language, this being the first language, the first universal language described in the Bible, first language that all man knew. You can find this language in Navajo rugs, in ancient pottery of the Fremont people. All these peoples, this language was passed down. I don't care if it was Incan, I don't care if you're across the sea in Russia, in Africa, Australia, they all used this language. They all knew each other. Go look at the back of Moai and Easter Island. There's the language. The book that I've just published, should be out in a couple weeks, is called The Ancient Universal Language of Man. It's going to show the primary decipherment of the main symbols. And further books will describe the sagas that these ancients had by their writings. This, interestingly enough, is a fish. Fish guts. His tongue, he's dead. There's a couple fish. There's bugs here listed showing that there's big carvings here up on top, grinding areas where they took the meal when they harvested the fish that actually spawned upriver. They built the rock dams to contain them upriver, and they processed them fish right here, right alongside the lake. They can process in a very big production environment, like they did on a lot of petroglyph sites that they harvested supplies, not only for living, but for trading. Loaded them on boats, and they could take that fish anywhere. The actual dates of the spawning, like fish do today, up freshwater, is listed up here, of those ancient fish. That's why this is an interesting rock. I was able to decipher it. Most of it here, and the fact there's also a hidden cave here, located within the region. I also put that in the book. The symbol for the hidden cave. It's on this rock. It's on a lot of rocks. A lot of main petroglyph sites, that's the one thing you need, is a place to store goods for a long period of time when you have to wait out a winter. In case, like in this event, you might have spawning and you have to wait the winter to get the food supplies out. Time to smoke them and, you know, secure the meat and stuff. And other sites where war retreat was usable for a backup plan, things like that, or even to live in it. There's a difference between hidden caves and real caves that are just open and visible. Hidden caves are secluded. They're at least not visible within the immediate area. They're hidden enough that you can store supplies and leave it pretty much unprotected and no one's going to find it. So please follow me in these documentaries, and I will talk more and visit many more petroglyph sites and discuss what the panel has to say. Not by drug-induced shaman, but by normal Joes out working a living like the deadliest catch, except it was a little more deadly. They had to cross the seas 16,000 years ago in ships and forage in a land that still had ice and giant lakes and giant fish and giant animals that could eat you, and use those resources in a very smart way. Tap into those resources, including mining, mammoths, using mammoths, training mammoths. You see it today. Archaeologists don't believe it, that you could be that smart yesterday. But these people were brilliant. They understood everything about nature, and they were able to survive and thrive as an empire. You can witness that in several areas here that I will be visiting and just showing you of graveyards. Whole empire graveyards, miles square, miles of graveyard. They cared about their dead maybe more than we do. They actually lived like we do near their graveyards, their little satellite graveyards I call them. But they would have paths going from their main camp, the main path going through the graveyard, through the environment, that you had to see them every day. That they were that connected with these people, and they buried them, they took care of them, they transported them wherever they died to another location in a procession. They believed in monitoring the stars, watching the world around them, and some of it they worshipped. But these people were smart, and I want to take you on that adventure and show you just how smart they were. Thank you.